I gave people all the stuff they really needed. Social Security checks, utility bills, TV guide.
I want a TV guidance counselor. TV guidance counselor. Staying up to watch all night, and everything's gonna be alright with my TV guidance counselor.
Hey everybody, welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I am Ken Reed, as always, your TV Guidance Counselor, here with the show TV Guidance Counselor, in which I discuss classic television with an interesting person, using TV Guide magazines from my personal collection as the inspiration for our conversation. And this week, my guest is the very funny comedian Laura Merli. Laura is a comedian, as I said. She has a great TikTok. She does all kinds of stuff as a writer. Go to Laura Merli, MERLI.com, and see what she has to offer, because you will enjoy it. She kind of got her start in Boston. We discussed that here, but our paths did not cross. I think that was around the time I started just never leaving my home. But that's a different story. Anyway, really enjoyed talking to Laura. Again, go to lauramerli.com, or put the link is in the show description here. Excuse me, or on all the social media, at Kenneth W. Reed, at TV Guidance. You can go to tvguidancecounselor.com. You can become a patron. If you do become a patron and you give $5 or more a month, I'll be very, very grateful, and I thank you for that. But also, today you would have gotten a PDF on the Patreon page, so you could follow along and make your own choices and look at what we're looking at in this issue. So that's patreon.com, TV Guidance Counselor. Just you Google that, or ask me for the link. You can email me at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@icanread.com. Also, I have a Buy Me a Coffee page, if people have asked. So if you want that link, you can do the same there. But anyway, that's all the business for now. It's time for the pleasure. And that's something I never want to say again. Oh, God, that was creepy. It's time for the enjoyable part of the show. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Laura Merli.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Laura Merli, how are you?
Hi, I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
These days, that's my equivalent.
That's
of
very understandable.
Yes. That's the way of the world now. We were just chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I knew you had a Boston connection, and you're a rare person who didn't grow up here and didn't go to school here, but lived here for a bit.
Yes. I got offered a job, and I was so nervous that I was never going to find a job that I just took the first job that was offered to me. And in hindsight, it was a very bad job that I should not have moved my whole life for. But it worked out well because I ended up getting into comedy when I moved to Boston. I don't know if I would have otherwise.
You've just described many people who've gotten married and moved to Boston. It's a very similar thing, except, bad for them. They moved here. It was like a job. Was it Improv Asylum or Improv Boston you started doing some stuff at? I
started at Improv Asylum, and then I went over to Improv Boston. So I've done all the major Boston improv theaters.
Yeah. Because I don't think it's odd our paths never crossed. Although I was more in the stand-up world, especially at that point. So you moved back to New York and started working a job you did like, and I'm assuming, and doing comedy down there, and then just actually were like, oh, I'm glad I'm not in Boston.
Well, I always wanted to come back to New York. I wasn't really done with New York when I got that job offer, but I was just like, I must go. I must go for the job. But I just felt like New York has a lot to offer. And then I got super into comedy, and New York is a great city for comedy as well. So not that Boston isn't, but it's not New York.
New York's got more going on. Yeah. I'm no super New York fan, but yeah, there's no contest there. Because you grew up in New Jersey, right?
I did, yes.
So how were you close to the city? Or were you sort of in South Jersey or North Jersey?
Yeah, I was in North Jersey in a commuter town where pretty much everybody's dads would drive into the city every day for work. That's what we called the city.
Yep.
South and Central Jersey, Philly is the city. but I'm firmly in the New York is category of New Jersey. And we're actually a little bit north of the city.
We would call Boston in town here, which is such a more old man way to say it in the city. Like, I gotta go in town. Ugh.
Yeah. I feel like coming from New York, though, so I grew up in New Jersey. I went to school in New York, and then I went to Boston, then I came back to New York. But being used to New York City being the city, when I got to Boston, I was like, okay, where's the downtown area? And people were like, here it is. And I was like, but where are all the big buildings?
Yeah.
There's one guy sticking up there, the John Hancock building. There's got to be more.
Yep. And did you ever hear about, I don't think it happened in the last 10 years, but when they first built that building, the glass windows would constantly fall out of it.
Oh no.
And like smash on people and like smash on the ground. Like it was such a frequent problem. It would happen like weekly.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Why would that happen? Didn't they have guys whose job it was to make that not happen?
I think they cut some corners. There were some lawsuits where they think they were like, guys, we can go home early, but the windows might fall out in, I don't know, like a fucking year. Like, that's fine. That's fine. Let's go.
That sounds like something that could kill you.
I think, I don't know if anyone died. People definitely were injured, though.
Okay.
What a story. Like, how did your dad die? Oh, there was a glass pane from floor 57 of the John Hancock building. It was like the Omen. So, yeah, North Jersey. Is Hamden, New Jersey in North Jersey? I don't know.
I know that word, but I can't remember exactly where that is.
Yeah,
Hamden.
When I was in the 90s, when I was in a band, we played an abandoned amusement park there that was like a fairy tale themed amusement park that had closed, and some people bought it and were running it like a nightclub.
I know I went to a fairy tale amusement park when I was little, but I can't remember where it was.
That might be it.
It might be it, though.
I've asked everyone I know from New Jersey, and none of them remember it. And I'm like, this was a real thing. This was not a dream I had. Although at this point, I'm not 100% sure. So this issue here you picked is from 1992, I believe. February 15th to the 21st. We got Regis and Kathy Lee on the cover. Are they why you picked this?
They're half the reason why I picked it is because they were on the cover, because I remember watching that a lot as a kid, because my mom would always have on Regis and Kathy. And I remember they were just so classy and cool at the time, and their reputations really changed as history went on. And then the other half of the reason why I picked it is there was this headline about stand-up comedy on it. So I thought it would be interesting to hear the perspective on stand-up back in the day. And it was certainly an interesting article.
It's a well-written article. Like, did you guys get TV Guide when you were growing up?
I don't think so, no. We just kind of used the TV Guide channel.
Yes. You were of the generation of the TV Guide channel, which was, in hindsight, a very short window of time.
Yes.
Between being able to watch whatever you want, the internet, and the printed TV Guide. But for people that don't know, it was a very slow scroll of what was on. And I would inevitably turn it on the second the channel I was looking for had just gone by. I would have to sit and wait for the whole thing to go by. TV Guide channel technically still around. It's
really?
Now Freevee. It's the same channel. It became like Pop TV, and then but
Freevee's the channel that has Jury Duty on, which was an excellent comedy.
Yeah, it's Amazon bought Pop from Paramount, I think. And it was TV Guide channel. They changed it to Pop, and then Amazon bought it and made it Freevee, and then is like using it to do comedies. It was very strange, but like their corporate name is still like TV Guide channel. That's a weird thing. I loved Regis and Kathy Lee. I think, especially as a kid, it seemed, well, first of all, it was live, like, which was unusual for like a non-news show. And it seemed like, this will sound stupid, but it seemed like anarchic. Like, it seemed like kind of crazy stuff would happen sometimes, and it was kind of like appealing as a kid. Yeah,
and they mentioned this in the TV Guide magazine as well, but they had really good chemistry. It was true. They just like played off each other really well. Like Regis was kind of uptight and Kathy was like kind of zany, but she wasn't completely crazy yet.
Yeah. Yeah, she wasn't drunk, is what you're saying. Or she could hold her liquor better at that time, I think. But yeah, the crazy thing, too, is the whole first half hour of the show was just them at the desk. It wasn't even guests.
Yeah, and from someone who's tried to do the, like, let's banter before a show as, like, an intro to a show thing, that is hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder than it looks to have a conversation that is engaging to people. And I say this as I'm on a podcast that's supposed to be engaging to other
Goodbye.
people.
No, it's true, though. It's true. Like, it's especially 5 days a week. Like, they would kind of just like, I mean, their producer would give them some sort of little springboards, but they'd have like some headlines and stuff. But a lot of it would just be them talking about, like, what'd you do last night? And it weirdly engaging.
Yeah, and they just saw each other.
Yeah. So I loved that show, and it was always there's some really interesting clips. Thank God for YouTube. A bunch of people have posted like all kinds of Regis and Kathy Lee stuff, and it's a fun rabbit hole to go down. There's also some cigarette ads in here, as I always mention, but I'm disturbed by the ad right after the front, which is for the 1992 Ford Club Wagon, and the weird thing is they've included a photo of a crash test dummy just getting fucking wrecked. and it's supposed to show that it's safe, but that does not look like...
No. And fun fact that I learned later on in life is that all the crash dummies that they used to use were built after adult men. So a lot of times if it's like, oh, the crash dummy survived, it's like, well, if you're a woman or a small child, you might not still.
Yeah, they're like, well, they don't count. Like, we just assume that you just get new ones.
Yeah.
You can't replace a man who died. Come on. Yeah, it's the only full-size van with a driver airbag. Like, it could have just said that. Like, we don't need a photo of a crash test dummy with its face smushed into this thing.
No.
Oh, man. Do you remember the Crash Test Dummies cartoon and toy line?
My brother had a crash test dummy toy that he was really into that he would like carry around everywhere, but I don't remember the TV show. So I was always like, this toy is so random. Where did it come from? Did
he have the action figure or like the stuffed one whose arms and legs were Velcro?
The stuffed one with Velcro, yeah.
So that came from a very weird series of PSAs that were about wearing seatbelts. And one of the Crash Test Dummies was voiced by Lorenzo Music, who was Garfield, and he was Venkman on Real Ghostbusters, and a writer for Mary Tyler Moore. But kids loved these ads where it was talking Crash Test Dummies being like, wear seatbelts. So somebody was like, let's license them as a cartoon in toys.
Innovator.
Really bizarre. I can't think of another... Like, there's tons of public service announcements that I would think, like, Hootie the Owl or, like, Smokey the Bear. They don't have toys.
No, Smokey the Bear never really caught on. People were kind of like, fuck you, Smokey the Bear.
Yeah, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
He's the friggin' man. Then there's an ad for one of those movies. There's maybe, like, 10 movies in history that just became instant punchlines. Like, I always think of like David Letterman. He would just say the title of that movie and it would be the punchline for anything. And this is one of them. It's stop or my mom will shoot.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I wrote down the tagline, which I thought was incredible. She did the laundry, washed the windows, and scrubbed the floors. Now she's going to clean up the streets.
Yes. It's so people who haven't seen this movie, because it's kind of been lost to time a little bit.
Yeah, I was surprised that it was so funny, the ad, but it didn't seem familiar to me at all.
It's Sylvester Stallone when he was post-action, and in the 90s he started trying to do comedy. This is when like we had Kindergarten Cop with Schwarzenegger. It was like 80s action guys were like, I'm going to do comedies now, which not all of them should have been. And it's him and Estelle Getty from Golden Girls, and she's his mom. And yeah, it's not a good movie. You'd be surprised to learn it's not a good movie. Then there's this really interesting article about Regis and Kathy Lee, but they frame it about all the different sort of chemistry of different pairings on TV at the time. So we have like Tim Allen, Patricia Richardson, Baby Newirth and Kelsey Grammer, Ted Shackelford and Joan Van Ark from Knots Landing. I couldn't tell you but hey.
No. And one thing I thought was really interesting is they mentioned that there were other co-hosts before Kathy Lee Gifford.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I don't remember that at all. I thought Regis and Kathy was like the start of Regis's career also.
So he was a singer in like the 50s and 60s, and he would show up, but he was very sort of local New York. And I believe Live with Regis was a local New York show with the other hosts. And then it went national with Kathy Lee. If I'm remember, someone will email me and tell me I'm wrong, but I think that's right. Also, this is a super bitchy, awesome sidebar in this thing about couples. There's one that says toxic spills, TV chemistry gone awry. And it's like people who had terrible chemistry. And one of them's Jamie Lee Curtis and Richard Lewis in the show Anything But Love, which was on for like 4 seasons.
So it couldn't have been that bad.
It is pretty bad. Like I have difficulty, or I think he's passed away, but I have difficulty believing Richard Lewis as a human being whenever he tried to act in things. Like he's one of those stand-ups where you're like, it's that guy who does stand-up. Like you never were like, he's this character.
Yeah, he's always himself.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain stand-ups that just don't have chemistry with anyone, but they manage to make it work, and things like Seinfeld does not have chemistry with human beings.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to describe Seinfeld, as someone with no chemistry with anyone else. Because, in that show, even when he's in a scene with someone else, he's very much on his own, monologuing.
Yes. Or even like Drew Carey, who's very likable, but he always seems, on the Drew Carey show, which I liked, he's very not present. Like, which they used in a good way, but yeah. And then another stand-up, Jackie Mason and Lynn Redgrave in Chicken Soup, which is a weird
I don't know
show.
that. What is that about?
So this was Jackie Mason. He's in his, 60s. This is like late 80s. They decided to give Jackie Mason a sitcom. And he owned a building in New York. He was basically playing himself. It was a pretty standard sitcom. But the really interesting thing of it was every show, he would open the show addressing the audience to camera from the roof of the house, like breaking the fourth wall. Then you'd have the sitcom. And then at the end, right before the credits, he would do like a stand-up bit, like wrapping up the plot of the episode, which sounds super alt comedy now, but was like a failure of CBS in 1989.
And it had nothing to do with Chicken Soup?
No, I forget, it was like his nickname or something. It was a really weird, like it didn't make any sense in the thing. Yeah, he wasn't like, I've owned the biggest chicken soup factory in the world. I have no idea why it was called Chicken Soup.
Nothing to do with Chicken Soup for the Soul.
No,
that big series.
Predating that. Which that's a massive company called Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is crazy. They have a network.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They have like a rival to Hallmark that makes those kind of movies, but it's like they have their own TV network.
But are they all true movies? Because those books were all real short stories, I think.
Were they?
I might be wrong, actually. They might have just been feel-good ones.
I wonder if it started as true ones, and then they're like, shit, we have to come out with more books, not enough stories. Like, we gotta just keep pumping these out. I've never read one of those. Have you ever read one of those?
Yeah, and they did get me. When I was a kid, I remember crying to Chicken Soup for the... I know I had Chicken Soup for the teenage soul. They made them for every kind of soul that you could have. And I had some other souls too, but now I can't remember what they were.
It wasn't like a chicken soup for the soulless, like parody.
No, unfortunately, I could use that now.
Now I'm also picturing the people who created that thinking that when you eat chicken soup, you should just be crying.
Yeah.
It's so good. Then there's the article about stand-up in here called Laugh Till It Hurts. And the sort of angle they take is like, we're sick of stand-ups.
Yeah, I thought that I was really surprised by that. That the whole article is basically stand-up, most of it sucks.
They're not wrong.
No.
They're really not, especially then. So this is 92. This is sort of right in the heart of the boom. But when the boom had gone on television, because the problem was stand-up was so cheap to put on TV because you have the clubs already. You stick one camera in there and there was 15 stand-up shows on. So everyone got a TV spot and a lot of people did not deserve one. And I feel bad for this guy in the beginning of the article.
I did too, because, okay, I didn't love the joke either.
No.
But I don't know that he deserved to be called out like that.
That's rough. It's Donald McIerney. And I've probably never heard of him because I assume he probably killed himself after this article came out because it's so mean. But he was doing an evening at the Improv and it says, you're a good group tonight. You're drinking, partying, you're all horny. It's like hanging out with the Kennedys. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not great. But
that's not great, but I bet you people laughed at it at the time.
Oh, I'm sure. And that was the weird thing, too, because you would see people do their club act, like not tailored for TV at all on those shows. And it is not a straight translation.
No, I was actually a little surprised that you could even say horny on TV at that time. Period.
A&E, basic cable. You could say horny after 10 o'clock on basic cable. Yeah, there was just so much of it. And that's when all the clubs opened and you really got this was just like hackorama. But they're mentioning like some really good comics. Like they interview Rita Rudner here. They talk about how Rosie O'Donnell was hosting VH1. Like it's a very interesting snapshot.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting too. They talked to a couple female comedians and they say like, now comedy's becoming so diverse. And it's like, interesting how we thought we solved the problem of sexism in comedy that long ago. And yet today we're still dealing with like a million people every time you're a girl who posts anything online being like, women aren't funny.
Oh yeah. And it's the same people. It's the comics listed here. You could almost name as big comics now, like the women comics to show you how few more, like it's Paula Poundstone, who's great. Rita Rudner, Joan Rivers, Judy Tenuta, who is no longer with us, Rosie O'Donnell. And that's kind of it. But they're all kind of, and I think Roseanne gets mentioned, but those are all kind of still like the big female comic names that most people would know. There's maybe been like 2 or 3 in there, and that's like in the last 4 years. So not a lot's changed.
No. And they mentioned when they were talking about diversity in comedy, Def Jam comedy, which makes sense to mention, but the way that they phrased it, I didn't write it down, but it was something like
uncensored language and cutting edge humor. Oh, where do they go? The press release for Def Jam. It was like inspired by hip hop culture. It was something like along those lines.
I was like, yeah, exactly. I was like, you can just say black people. That's not a bad word. Yeah.
They use some words in here that I don't like. Lascivious? Licentious? The lure of licentious. Licentious. Thank you. My wife is much smarter than me. Licentious. I've never heard
I know
that word.
Lascivious. I don't know licentious.
Licentious, I've never heard. And yeah, and then Richard Lewis goes, I find it inflammatory to have women or gay bashing jokes or jokes about disease, which is an interesting, but he's not saying like, oh, you can't make those jokes anymore, you get canceled.
Yeah. I thought that was a very interesting quote too, because number one, it's interesting to group together in terms of jokes you don't want women, anti-women, anti-gay, and disease.
Yes. Like, I'm sorry about your disease, woman.
Like where did the disease thing come from? I wonder, is he speaking about AIDS, you think?
Yeah, 100%. Because at this time, 92, there were so many AIDS and gay jokes. It was like so many. Like, the only thing that would be different is if they somehow also incorporated Puerto Ricans. It was like the innovation there. But then Paula Poundstone says a really interesting thing here, where she says she blames the viewers for supporting offensive material. If people don't look for better things, they won't get shown. People keep applauding things that are wretched. And she's 100% right and is still right.
Yeah, we still definitely have that problem today.
It's horrible that I could pull that quote out here right now and say Paula Poundstone said this, and people would be like, she said this today, right?
Yeah.
Like, nope.
Today, though, the disease would be like COVID.
Yes. It wouldn't be women. Speaking of diseases, communism, on that same page, there's an ad you can buy because the Soviet Union had just fallen, like, months before this issue, and it says direct from Russia, official Russian commemoratives marking the end of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, I thought that was very bizarre. I don't remember. I am old enough that I remember having access to multiple like maps and globes, and some of them would say Soviet Union and some of them would say USSR, and being a little bit like, what's going on there? What's happening?
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, I guess the right age at the right time to really know what was going on with that.
You don't remember Hasselhoff dancing on the Berlin Wall and singing when they were breaking it with hammers?
Not at all.
Yeah,
what was he doing there?
So David Hasselhoff was massive in like Eastern Europe and like Germany. He had a big scene. He was like a big pop star. So they were like, we need the biggest pop star in the world to celebrate the fall of the wall. Get Hasselhoff. Like, okay, fair enough. Then there's a picture in here of the Jacksons because they're talking about a 2-part movie about the Jacksons, which came out later. But the picture they have of them, they're all topless.
That is weird. You know,
Why?
when I looked at that, I was like, something is weird about this, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But it's that. They're all like young boys in it. And they all are shirtless with long pants. Yeah, strange choice.
It's not like they're at the beach or something. Like, it's
yeah,
just
they're
like,
not like, oh, it's hot, we got shorts on. Like, they have long pants.
Yes, and this looks like it was shot at like a Sears or a JCPenney.
Yeah.
Like a family portrait, but they're like, okay, guys, let's do one without the shirts.
Yeah.
Just for fun, come on.
And they're not ripped. I mean, they are children, so you wouldn't expect them to be. But why?
Nothing about it makes sense. And little Michael in the front there, he's sitting down. There's got to be a story behind that photo, and I don't know if I want to know it.
Yeah.
And then in Grapevine, they mentioned this is when Julia Sweeney was sort of the breakout star of '92 on SNL doing Pat.
Yes. That I just found out about recently through a show that's on Amazon Prime. I'm blanking on what it's called right now, but it's so good. It's about this woman who she is like androgynous and she's a lesbian and she's very depressed. And she decides that one of her coworkers gives her a bag of almonds and she decides she's going to eat an almond a day. And if she doesn't feel better by the time she finishes the bag of almonds, she's going to kill herself.
Okay.
And one of the many reasons why she's like depressed in life is like how people treated her as an androgynous woman back in the day. And there's a lot of flashbacks where she talks about that show, Pat. And at first I thought they made it up for the show. I was like, there's no way this was a real thing that was on television. And Julia Sweeney actually makes a guest appearance in the show. And they have this nice like sort of moment where she apologizes for it. And I looked it up and it is real. And it's like more offensive than you even think that it would be.
It is and it isn't, in that I will say, having grown up through it, 'cause I'm a few years older than you, it stood out as being less about laughing at Pat and more about laughing at everyone else and their reactions to Pat, which is a difference without a distinction to some degree there. But it was unusual because if you look at like In Living Color, which was on at the same time, they had a sketch called Handyman. which was about a mentally challenged handicapped guy who was a superhero, right? And it was Damon Wayans doing like the most horrific handicapped person, but all the jokes would be like, he's trying to fly, he fell down. Like that would be it. Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it was, in hindsight, obviously, just the conceit of its Pat is pretty offensive, but I feel like for the time they were at least trying a little bit harder to like be like, people, it's everyone else who has the problem, kind of.
But it seemed like, and I haven't seen like the full movie or full sketch, so I could be wrong, but it seemed like they were, even though that was part of the joke, those people were having like a kind of normal reaction for the time. And I guess it's like weird to me too, because trans and non-binary issues were just like not on my mindset at all until like I was much older. So I kind of thought that non-binary people didn't really exist in media because I just didn't remember it happening until like very recently. But there is this, and like trans people, but there is like this whole like history that I just missed of like all this like offensive trans and binary stuff. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at before that, if you look at like Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill, it's always like, these are cross-dressers and they're murderers. They're murderous perverts. Like, like at least with Pat, it was just like, Pat's just a person who works in an office and they're not like a freak, you know?
But the quotes that Julia Sweeney gives are, Pat is the most disgusting character I could possibly think of.
That is
Pat. Pat is always grabbing their mysterious genitalia. Yes. And being disgusting.
Yeah, because Pat also is like constantly going like it's just like a nerd character as well. There were so many people who did characters, especially on SNL at the time, that in hindsight I was like, oh, you're just playing someone with autism?
Yes.
But we're just like, that's hilarious. Like, and I'm like, well, what do sketch shows do now for characters?
Even now, every once in a while, I'll watch a character show or like clowning on a variety show and be like, I know this isn't their intention, but it kind of sounds like they're making fun of a handicapped person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's like people's go-to is like gay voice, like funny voice. What can I do? Like it was like gay, handicap, or foreign. It was like, that was just like the go-to doing a sketch voice. And I don't know what, I haven't watched really much SNL in the last decade or 2 decades, but I do recall Kristen Wiig had quite a lot of grotesque characters that probably weren't that dissimilar, but just in a slightly different presentation. So there's always kind of those like archetypical, especially in SNL, like characters that they have.
Right, yeah.
That in 10 years will be like, what were they thinking with that one?
That was one thing when I did do improv. The feedback that I got a lot was, you need to do more characters. You just always come into a scene as yourself. And I was like, I don't want to just put on a weird voice for the sake of putting on a weird voice. Isn't that kind of mean to people who have a weird voice?
Right.
And also, I have a weird voice, so why don't I just use my own weird voice?
I was gifted with this weird voice. Like, it was always funny to me to see people's weird go-tos when they would be doing improv. Like, I would always see if this was your experience. I would notice a lot of people, and it would usually be women, they would go into like 1940s voice for some reason. It was like, we're doing improv, we got to do this. And I'm like,
that was a big stock character for sure. Yeah. And I was like, I don't think we even know what we're referencing though. No. Like, how many of us have even seen these
some
movies?
Screwball comedy from the 30s? I'm like, all right. And then for some weird reason, and this was regardless of the person, when they have to do like a bit of business to be a character, they always be like mixing. Like, I have a bowl and I'm mixing something. I don't know why. It has nothing to do with the scene, but this is just the choice that I've decided to make. Would see it all the time.
I remember they were like, if you don't know what to say, try and do something physical. And the only thing I could think of to do was just have a cup of coffee and sip a cup of coffee.
It's not a bad thing.
So that's what I'd do if I couldn't think of anything. But
Yeah.
that did not rank high on the physicality scale.
When we would do sketches in the early days and we couldn't end a sketch, it would always end with either someone taking off their clothes or people getting in a fight or both. That was like the only way to end a sketch.
When we couldn't end an improv scene, it would always end up ending with like God or Hitler somehow would make an appearance. That's like as heightened as you could get.
Fair enough. Have you ever seen SCTV?
I don't think so.
So it was people who started Second City, and it was a lot of the people who was like SNL adjacent, but there's a really funny episode where it's a very complicated thing, but it's Martin Short playing Howie Mandel. And he's on a talk show, and they're like, Howie is an expert at improv. So they bring out this like table of different objects, and they're like, he's never seen these before. He's going to improvise a whole scene. And he's just going, and he's like, if you don't have anything, it's fine. If you don't have anything, we'll just move on. No. And it goes on. It's fantastic. It's great. Before we get to the listings here, I do have to point out on page 16 of the PDF, a beautiful, beautiful item that you could have purchased by mail in 1992 from the Franklin Mint. It's called On the Wings of Love. It's a legendary unicorn with his message of love everlasting and fine hand-painted porcelain.
I saw that and I thought, do unicorns mean everlasting love?
I've
That's
never
not
heard that.
something I associate with unicorns at all.
No, me either. And it's precious porcelain work of art with accents of 24 karat gold.
And I have to say, this unicorn looks pretty shitty.
Yeah, it's very
Like,
shitty.
Yeah. This is not a classy type of unicorn that you would think of when you think of an everlasting love
It's
unicorn.
not like a steed, like a
Yeah. This is not that. This is something that looks like your moderately talented child put together in art class.
or like at a birthday party. I'm looking
Yeah.
this up on eBay because I'm curious if there are any selling right now. On the Wings of Love unicorn. It looks like a porcelain, like My Little Pony ripoff. Like it's that kind of design.
But worse.
Way worse. Way worse. Okay, there is one online. Wow. Okay. This is unusual. Normally these things, so they're selling this for $37.50 plus a one-time charge of $195 shipping. So about $40 for this thing. Normally I would expect to see like 40 of them on eBay for like $5 or $6. 2 have sold in the last 6 months for around $100 each.
Whoa.
Why? Who bought this?
Somebody who wants everlasting love.
My God. Well, you can get everlasting love for $100. Like, buying it now is even weirder. What are they doing? So let's dive in here. Saturday night, what jumped out at you to watch?
So Saturday, my first show from 8 to 9, I have Golden Girls, because that was on Nick at Night when I was growing up, and I really enjoyed that show. I like, they're all like fun, saucy kind of ladies, and it's cool that even now you don't see that many shows with older women in them. And I'm also getting older and older, so they're getting closer and closer in age to me, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like when you're like, oh, the first season of that show, what are they, 50?
Yeah, for real.
What? And that show it still holds up. It feels very timeless, partially because they're older people, so it's not like they're wearing fashions of the day. It's sort of that like, out of time, and because they're in Florida, and it's like, that's kind of just what Florida always looks like. So you're like, this is now, or, 30 years ago. And it's funny that show, it sort of did at the time, but more in the decades after, developed this massive gay following. Mm-hmm. Where they're just like, this is a show about like 5 gay dudes living in a house, basically. Watch the show, which isn't that far off.
No. And apparently there was a gay male character in the pilot, and then he got written out.
Which isn't a surprise at the time. We had very few gay characters on TV. There was one in the show Soap, which was very cartoonish. And then there was a show called Love, Sydney that was Tony Randall. And he played a gay man who adopted these kids. And in the pilot, he's gay. And the rest of the show, never mention it again.
You just buried that deep down. Yeah.
Yep. Whole premise of the show. We don't care. Saturday nights, this is a good lineup. Yeah.
Yeah. And then afterwards, I have Winter Olympics, which I'll say I put for a lot of them because when I would watch the Olympics, I would watch a lot of the Olympics. It was always fun to like follow all the events, and this is winter, so it didn't say specifically like which events were on which days, but I'm really into the figure skating, and I also really like when they do those like tricks on the skis.
Oh yeah. So this night it's figure skating men's final, speed skating men's 500 meter, skiing the women's downhill, and hockey USA highlights. I love that hockey is like the lead. They're like these things, and then hockey.
As it should be. Yes,
I agree. It seems like the Olympics were a much bigger deal at this time.
I agree. Yeah, like people are talking about it now, but not nearly as much as they used to. Like I remember back in the day, you could name a lot more Olympians than you can name now. Like I know Simone Biles because she's been around for quite a while, but I can't really name any other current Olympians.
Yeah, I certainly couldn't. I think in the late 90s is when they switched it. So it used to be every 4 years, and they do the summer and winter the same year. And I think now they do every 2 years. It's like 2 years winter, 2 years summer, 2 years winter. So like it maybe more frequently. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, well, it's interesting with the 4-year thing and how certain sports you have to be on the younger side to play. I was listening to this podcast earlier today, Celebrity Memoir Book Club, about like Simone Biles' autobiography. And in it, they talked about how it's not just if you're a good gymnast, but are you born in the right time period that you're the right age when the Olympics come up? And that's something I never thought about, but that's so funny.
You're the greatest of all time, but you'll be 2 years too old when the Olympics happen.
Yeah.
Like, man, I wonder how many stories of like heartbreak there are like that.
Yeah, where it's like you just were like, it wasn't the right time in your life when it was Olympics time. And then the next time it came around, like, you know.
You're an old man at 21.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care anymore. It's so youth. It's so funny how, like, to the Golden Girls thing, like, that whole world, isn't Simone Biles like 27 or something? And they're like, this old lady's back on the...
Yeah, it's incredible how old she is for gymnastics.
Which is so weird. Like, imagine being that age and, like, you're in the Olympics when you're, like, 19. That's, like, the peak. Then you have like 6 decades of living left to do.
Yeah, a lot of them get really depressed afterwards because it's just their whole life has just been prepping for this event, and then it's over and it's like, okay, now we go on. Yeah.
We had Mary Lou Retton, who I think was in the 80 or 82 Olympics as a gymnast, and then for about 6 years on TV, like hosted everything. Like, it'd be like, all right, we'll have Mary Lou Retton come out and do a backflip and then be very excited to host, like, Circus of the Stars.
Would she really do a backflip each time?
Oh, yeah. Like, she had a kids' exercise show on Saturday mornings, and she'd come out backflipping and be like, come on, let's go. And it'd be like, geez.
Don't do that part, kids.
Yeah, except for that. You'll get hurt. And don't sue us. Then what'd you do?
So on Sunday, I have 8 p.m. America's Funniest Home Videos. I did really enjoy that show growing up. I don't know if I would still like it now if I saw it, but it's strange because growing up and currently now, I usually am not a big loving watching people falling over type, but for some reason that show is just very charming. And it was a lot of people just eating shit.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, it was basically YouTube videos. They were like viral videos, but on the show. And this night, Sunday, February, this is the $100,000 winner show. This is like the big finale of all the best winners. And it is funny still. Like I'll watch it and a lot of them hold up. And I will say some of the most I've ever laughed in my life is that America's Funniest Home Videos clips, but some weird ones. This is when Saget was still hosting it. And it was such a huge hit that they created the show America's Funniest People to air with it, but they don't have enough videos of people eating shit. So they would like go to shopping malls and stuff and then just like film people doing like impressions.
Yeah, I saw America's Funniest People and I was really curious about that. So I did list it as my next show because I was like, how have I never heard of this show? It sounds interesting. It must be from the same creators.
Yep. Vin DeBona was the guy's name. He was a Boston guy, which is why he got a Boston guy to host the show later. But yeah, it was hosted by another Full House guy. Dave Coulier hosted it. And it was like a lot of like Dave Coulier doing sketches and like people would send in like weird like short films they made. It was very strange. And it was co-hosted at first by Arlene Sorkin, who was a soap opera actress, but she was also the inspiration for the character Harley Quinn on Batman. She was Paul Dini, who wrote Batman the Animated Series, saw an episode of whatever soap opera Arlene Sorkin was on, where she was dressed as a Harlequin and she kind of had that like Brooklyn-y accent thing. And he just created that character on Batman full out. It's Arlene Sorkin. And then she passed away recently, but she left the show and then she was replaced by Tawny Katane, which is very strange. I can't imagine any of that show holds up. It wasn't good then.
No, but I think it would be an interesting watch.
Sure.
Sometimes it's fun to watch things that don't hold up at all.
The really interesting thing about that, which you would sometimes get on America's Funniest Home Videos, but not as much, is you see how much the novelty of people being on camera, which is not a thing now. Like if someone had a camera, people would walk by and wave or be like, oh, I'm on TV, blah, blah, blah. And now everyone's just so used to it. You could be like, we're filming this live on national TV. And people are just like, all right.
Yeah. And I think part of the charm of it was that it was such a moment when someone would be filming with a camera that it's funny that they captured these very specific things. Whereas now where people are filming so much, it's a little bit less like, oh my God, I can't believe they captured that.
It's almost the opposite. Like, wow, no one got that? There's 15 cameras here. No one got that? It's like, yeah. And there's some still ones that people show. Like there are some people share on like TikTok or as memes that are literally like America's Funniest Home Videos clips from like 35 years ago.
Yeah.
There's the one with the girl with the, that toy that you pull and it like flies. Have you seen that one on Christmas morning? And it goes right into the fireplace. Yeah, that was one. That was one on that one. But yeah, interesting to watch.
I think that one deserved to win, but there's a lot of times where the ones that were nominated from the episode, I was like, these are not the funniest videos of this episode.
They never were. And people would get, like, I remember going to school on Monday because it's a Sunday night show, and in like third grade, would be like, what the hell, laughing babies? That sucked.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of times they went for ones with cute kids over funniness, and that always pissed me off because I was like, it's America's Funniest Home Videos, not cutest kids.
Yeah, I think they would do that because they for the finale they would fly the family in and they would like interview them, and I'm sure they were like, well, then we can say like, oh, hey kid, you like Disney World? And they'll be like,
yeah,
we'll get an extra minute of TV out of it. There's also a made-for-TV movie on that night based on a true story, like Chicken Soup for the Soul, starring Sarah Jessica Parker and Sally Struthers, and it's called In the Best Interest of the Children.
Oh.
Two women love them. One is their real mother. One treats them as if she were. Who will be allowed to keep them?
I think it's pretty clearly the mom.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's who they'll side with.
Yeah, unless, like, she has a major problem.
I mean, she might. A controversial legal battle fought in Iowa over the custody of 5 siblings. Okay. Pre-Sex in the City, Sarah Jessica Parker playing a woman with 5 siblings, 5 children. Anything else on that night?
I had at 9 p.m. Ghostbusters 2. Because I remember really enjoying the Ghostbusters movies when I was a kid. I don't remember them that well, but I have a feeling that they would hold up pretty well.
Yeah, they're good. The first two are very good. I like the second one. It got a lot of people hated it when it came out. Like, I think it was just like the first one was so beloved, there was no way people were going to be into it. But it's very funny. Bobby Brown had a great song in it on her own. But yeah, it's good. It's a good movie. I like Ghostbusters too. Very New York. A New Year's Eve movie too, I think. A rare New Year's Eve movie, not a Christmas movie.
They should have more New Year's Eve movies. It's a really crazy night of the year.
Yeah, you would think. I can only name like maybe 2 or 3 New Year's Eve movies. Like, yeah, that seems like a good holiday that has not been exploited enough. We should write a script. We just made $1 million, everybody. New Year's Eve movie. Monday, what'd you do?
Monday at 8 p.m. I started with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That show was on Nickelodeon, I think, in syndication when I was growing up. And I enjoyed it. I found it very charming at the time. And I think that I probably still would. There's probably like a couple little things here and there that would be a little like weird now. But I think for the most part that would hold up.
Yeah, it's very of its time, but not in like a cringy way. But
yeah.
The strangest thing on that show that I totally forgot about was how many like serious episodes they had. Like when Will's dad comes, like there's a lot of very special episodes of Fresh Prince that I did not remember them being like that serious every so often, which is very strange.
I just remember watching it with my dad and my grandma, and Will was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air himself, was always very like flirty and wacky, and he like poked this girl in her tummy, and he was like, see, wouldn't that be even more fun if we were both naked?
Jesus.
And my dad got so pissed. He was like, what is this? You can't show this in front of my mother. And my mom was like, honey, your mother had 9 children. I think that she is okay with the sexual reference.
She knows how it works.
Yeah.
Or maybe she doesn't. That's why there's 9. Like, again?
How did this
It just keeps happening. What's going on? Man. There's a weird thing this is a Boston edition, so there was a show called The Movie Loft on one of our UHF stations, and I don't remember them doing this, but on Monday there's an ad here. You can call this number, a local Boston number, anytime, and vote on which movie they'll show on Friday.
Oh, interesting.
But it is 2 of the least alike movies ever. It's either Hitchcock's Rope with James Stewart or Summer Rental with John Candy. Which I like.
I've never heard of the second one.
It's directed by Carl Reiner. It's from '85. It's a pretty fun, like family, wacky kind of summertime comedy. I try to watch it every summer. But like Rope and Summer Rental, what a weird choice. That's bizarre.
Yeah, they were like, we don't know our audience at all, so we'll just see what people tell us they want.
You're one of 2 things in this world. You're Rope or Summer Rental. That's it. And then only because I caught the description of the show and it kind of amazed me. There's a show called The Astronomers, and it says this episode examines gravity. First theorized by gravity waves. First theorized by Albert Einstein. Okay.
Cool.
Sure. Tuning into that.
So then, because The Fresh Prince is apparently only 8 to 8:30, at 8:30 I have Blossom, but the description really cracked me up because I don't remember this episode, but apparently this episode, Salt and Peppa are guests on Blossom, quote, adding spice when they help jazz up a video birthday greeting for Blossom's mom.
Yes.
So that sounds pretty interesting.
And this is 92 Salt and Peppa, so they're like, they haven't even sort of classed it up with What a Man.
Yeah.
In Vogue. This is still like kind of hip hop Salt and Peppa.
Yeah.
They're pushing
on Blossom.
it. Yeah, on Blossom. Blossom was like shockingly kind of a like hip show.
Yeah.
Like the guy who played the older brother, he was a writer on Conan while he was on Blossom.
Oh, cool. Good for him.
Yeah. And he wrote like movies and stuff. Like, just such a weird. The first Seinfeld parody I ever saw was in an episode of Blossom. Which was very strange to do. Like, no one was doing that at the time.
Yeah, I'm sure that went right over my head at the time because I just remember being like, oh, she's got cool hats and long hair.
Like her friend. Yeah, the Seinfeld parody one, it was her and her brother. I don't think it was Joey Lawrence. I think it was the other brother or the dad. And they were talking about coffee being caffeinated. She's like, oh, that coffee's half calf. Oh, there's no calf. There's calf in that coffee. Like, it was so like a Seinfeld episode. It was very funny. There's also another inspired by a true story made for TV movie on at the same time called Till Death Do Us Part. Two beautiful wives, two ugly murders, one clever killer. What?
This sounds very pro-killer.
It does sound very pro-killer. And the ad's kind of cool because it's them at the wedding, but the church like window, stained glass window behind them is a big skull.
Oh,
it's pretty badass. Like weird goth church. And apparently it's mostly a courtroom drama because it says a powerful victory for Vincent Bugliosi, the man who convicted Charles Manson. Okay.
All right.
I convicted Charles Manson. Let me sell you this movie.
I'm glad he's doing good things.
Yeah. Although it doesn't say that he convicted this guy. Like it just says a victory. Like, did he get the guy off or did he get the guy to jail? Which
yeah, that's very important.
Yeah. But they don't want to end it. They don't want to ruin the ending. Anything else on Monday?
And then I just had more Olympics.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Just say what's on the
Getting
Olympics
back
this
to
night.
it at 9 p.m.
We got figure skating, dance final.
Hell yeah.
Skiing, I don't know what this is. The women's Super G.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what that is either.
Speed skating, women's 500 meters, and Hockey USA highlights. Women's Super G. Everyone's favorite Olympic event. Oh my God. There's also an ad in here for a Lifetime talk show. And this is when Lifetime, their tagline was literally television for women. And this looks like the most made up parody of a talk show. It's called Attitudes. And it's Dorothy, Lucy, and Rolanda Watts doing a talk show. Tomorrow, what your fantasies say about you and more. Attitudes. Like, wow. How 92 is that? Oof. Tuesday, what'd you do?
Tuesday at 8 p.m., I have this film that I hadn't heard of, but it sounded pretty delightful, called Don't Eat the Pictures. The Muppet Gang is locked inside New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art.
I've never heard of this either, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it sounds so cute. And I would like to see them eat some of the pictures.
Yeah, and I'm sure they do. They do. They meet the spirit of an ancient Egyptian prince.
Oh.
It's on Disney Channel. I don't know if it was produced that year. I don't know if this is post Henson Muppets, but I need to look this up because that sounds pretty amazing. And the only thing it's against is a showing of Weekend at Bernie's hosted by Super Dave Osborne on Fox. I don't know why he's hosting it.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's a movie that needs no host.
No. And where they're like, you know who should get to host Weekend at Bernie's? Super Dave Osborne. Yeah, Muppets Night at the Museum sounds good to me.
Yeah, and then at 9 p.m. I have Roseanne, which was another show that was on Nick at Night when I was growing up that I enjoyed watching. And it is kind of nostalgic for me before Roseanne was a terrible person, and she seemed pretty cool. Yeah,
and the show is great. Like, that show still holds up. Unlike Cosby, where the show itself is tainted by him now, even though there was a funny, sweet show with a great ensemble cast. Like, I cannot watch that show. Roseanne, you can still watch, even though she's a terrible person. Like, it for some reason doesn't taint the show. Like, the concept and like jokes in the show aren't a constant reminder of what a bad person she is. And you don't like read, you're like, oh, in hindsight, like, there's not a lot of that. And I love that show. And from what I've watched of the Connors, it's pretty much same tone, same jokes. It's pretty good.
I haven't seen the Connors. I should give it a shot. I had just like very low expectations of that. Like, anytime that they're like, let's bring a property back from forever ago, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be bad.
It doesn't strike me as it's not like a nostalgia trip. And it's, if anything, what I've seen of it, it's way more dramatic than Roseanne. Like, it's almost just like all the heavy stuff. There's a lot of fighting, like screaming matches. And I mean, they killed Roseanne. I mean, what do you get from that?
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, and it fits in the show. Like, it's not...
it's not abrupt and weird.
It's not super abrupt and weird because so they had her overdose on opioids, which completely fits with like the socioeconomic thing. But Roseanne's plan in the show was to have Roseanne get addicted to painkillers, like for a back problem. So they'd been kind of setting it up like throughout the series. So when they just had her overdose, it wasn't totally out of left field, which was kind of an amazing like magic trick that they pulled off.
Yeah, and even though opioids are talked about a lot now, they're still not really talked about much on sitcoms. So that is pretty, I don't know what the word would be. Not necessarily
Reflective?
brave, but yeah, like
I feel like
it's a good choice.
Yeah, well, I feel like all the sitcoms now are they're not about middle class to lower middle class people. Or like people would have those kinds of issues. They're like in a workplace or like a rich family, or like it's never like, it doesn't seem like it would be people that would even encounter that. So it makes sense. Anything else on that night?
I just went right back to the Olympics after those.
It's there. It's always there for you.
Yeah.
Wednesday, what are you doing?
So Wednesday, I started out with the Olympics at 8, and then at 9:30 I went to Championship Ballroom Dancing 1992, which I thought would be really fun to watch because I really like Dancing with the Stars and shows like that showcase ballroom is like a very interesting art form to me.
Yeah, this was interesting because this is like pre-swingers. When like swing dancing had that big revival, like maybe 2 years after this. So like the only sort of competitive dancing was like ballroom stuff. And it was on PBS and they aired it for a few years. I'm curious to check out how it's presented then.
Yeah, I took dance for many years when I was growing up, and I was so bad at it because I'm not coordinated and I have a lot of trouble remembering steps. So I would just stare at the girl in front of me and do exactly what she was doing, which is something you cannot do in ballroom.
No, it's not like church.
No. In ballroom, you have to be on your shit. Because like you're with a partner. So if you're not both like doing exactly the same thing, like even if you're doing a harder kind of dance, but you're doing it by yourself, you can at least like play it off if you forget what's going on or you mess up a little bit.
It's my style.
Yeah.
Yeah,
ballroom, they're like, they got to be on top of things.
I don't know, check that should have been an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
On ice. Ice dancing. Then what'd you do?
I think that's all I had for Wednesday. Should I go to Thursday?
Yeah, let's do Thursday. Oh, we'll mention that on the Olympics Wednesday night, it is skiing the women's giant slalom.
I don't remember what that is.
It's fun to say.
Yeah. So for Thursday at 8, I have Mork and Mindy, which is a show that I always wanted to watch, but it wasn't on like Nick at Night during my Nick at Night era. And I've seen like clips from it, and it always looked really fun. I think it's about aliens, and I love a good alien show.
It's weird. So it was a spinoff of Happy Days.
Which you would not think would be where an alien show would come from.
No, especially since it doesn't take place in the 50s. But Happy Days does, but they don't address that at all. It's an unusual show that it's set in Colorado, which almost no shows are.
No.
It was the thing that broke Robin Williams huge, which is funny now because I bet very few people think of Robin Williams as like a crazy stand-up, and probably more, especially younger people, more think of him as like a dramatic actor.
I still think of him as being the genie in Aladdin.
that's the closest he was to Mork in anything, like that character. And it was just that. They would just like let him go. Like there was barely blood. But then even then they would have weird episodes that were like oddly dramatic. Like there's a Halloween episode where because Mork's an alien, he can channel the spirit of Mindy's dead father.
Oh.
And he has like a talk with her that he always wanted to say, but you know, he died. And it's like this weird, like father, it's very weird.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of very special Halloween episodes.
No, and like heavy weird, like there's crying. It's bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I went back to the good old Olympics.
The good old Olympics. Drexel's Class is on, which was a Dabney Coleman sitcom where he taught a group of kids. It was probably the most successful sitcom he did, but it wasn't very successful. But this episode is insane. On a cruise, Drexel plays paparazzo to photograph teen idol. Jason Priestley is playing a character who's a teen idol, and his character name is Teen Priest.
Oh.
Jason Priestley as teen priest, who, quote, baptizes women with his lips.
Oh, I don't like that.
Not even the weirdest part. The weirdest part is rap group Digital Underground performs the song No Nose Job. What?
Okay.
That's a hell of an episode right there. Yeah. Wow.
To baptize someone with your lips, that sounds really wet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds pretty gross. But I bet there's some weird, like, evangelical religion that does that. I'm sure there is. Friday night, final night of the week. What are you doing?
Friday, on TBS, there's this movie called The Boy Who Could Fly. It was made in 1986, and it's stated a sensitive tale about an autistic boy. And I was just really curious about if a movie created in 1986 would truly be a sensitive portrayal. So I was just like curious to see that.
It is more than any other movie I can think of from around that time, in that it still had that ridiculous cliche of like, person with autism is magic. Like the Rain Man kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those ones where like he's nonverbal and he's always drawing pictures of people flying, and then it turns out he actually can fly. So that like almost that you're kind of like, but he is sort of presented as more of a human and not like a plot device.
Okay, good and bad.
Yeah, it's shockingly good for the time. And it was written and directed by the guy who played Michael Myers in the first Halloween film.
Random.
Yep. Yep. It's Fred Savage is in it. It was a huge movie. It oddly was like a fluke hit. It was like kind of an under the radar hit in 1986.
That's so weird because I've never heard of that movie.
It was big for like 5 years and then just never aired on TV, and everyone just kind of forgot about it. I don't know why. It also stars Jay Underwood, who was in like 1 million movies for 3 years and then completely disappeared. But you probably would recognize him. It's up against Darkman.
Oh.
The Sam Raimi superhero film that no one liked. Okay, Boy Who Could Fly, is that all night?
I was going to do that and then go back to the Olympics.
Fair enough. Fair enough. With other people flying on skis.
Yes.
Here's a weird thing. There's a documentary on at 10 o'clock called The 90s, which is odd because this is February 1992.
Yeah, we really don't have a lot of 90s to go off of yet.
No. But this episode sounds like this is like tailor-made for me. Like I need to find this. It says, this hour visits shopping malls across the country to look at, quote, America's new Main Street. And then it says, including AIDS.
Oh, what?
Dispensing information in condoms in malls. Representatives from the Muzak Corporation discussing the sound systems at Fashion Island in Newport Beach, California. What a mixture of things.
Yeah.
Man,
cool.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for watching footage of a mall from 1992. Like that's got to be great.
Yeah, and I feel like my like mall era wasn't that long after that, and I can't imagine someone just handing out condoms in any of the malls that I went to.
Yeah.
I feel like there would have been outrage.
Yeah, like we're from the pretty liberal Northeast. And I can't imagine that people would lose their minds.
Yeah, I went to public school and we still had abstinence only education.
We didn't, but they definitely weren't like handing out condoms. It was like, if you're one of these weirdos who's a pervert and is going to have sex, you should probably get one of these things because you're probably going to get a disease from the other freaks that you're touching.
Ours was very much like the only way to not get pregnant or get an STD is abstinence. That's the truth.
I mean, it's not wrong.
Yeah.
I remember we had this poor teacher. She was probably 22. And she was like just out of college. She was our health teacher. And she had like it was like a model of like a vagina. And she was trying to show, I don't know why, was trying to show this class of like 90% boys how to put like spermicidal foam or something in there. And it got...
Does anyone use that?
I don't think so. I having seen how it went in this instance, I don't see why they would. It was basically like a bottle of shaving cream, but like expanded like mousse. And she put way too much in it, and it just started like going everywhere, like a dishwasher that has soap in it, the suds going out. And she was like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" It was the poor woman.
Yeah, baby, I want to fuck your mousse.
Yeah. All right, yeah, I'm ready now. Here we go. Oof. Well, to close out here, as you know, TV Guide is not just informative, it has opinions and it cheers and it jeers. So I'd like to read you the cheers and jeers from this TV Guide, February 15th, 1992. This is always one of my favorite segments in TV Guide because it's unsigned. So they tend to get super bitchy. Because they don't have to take credit for it. This one is unusually a cheer-heavy week. We have 3 cheers, 1 jeer. I'll read you the cheers and jeers, see if you agree or disagree. Cheers to the Nashville Network for providing there's still a place on TV for a good variety show. Since its debut last fall, the Statler Brothers show has been the most popular series in TNN's history, and it finished last year as cable's highest rated series. Hosted by the 4 Statlers, the show juxtaposes top country stars with an eclectic group of comics, ventriloquists, magicians, and even on one occasion, a juggler who effortlessly tossed around several cordless electric carving knives. Yes, it definitely smacks of Ed Sullivan, but that's exactly why it works. This is one really big shoe.
I'd check it out.
The
Electric
photo.
carving knives?
Yeah, I didn't even know they made cordless ones. That does strike me as a combination of an old man and someone just rewriting a public relations release.
Yes.
Like, here we go. We're good. Talk about the knives. And then our only jeer, after they just said the Nashville Network's great for juggling knives, it says, "Jeers to this week's episode of PBS's Nova." Entitled, "Can You Believe TV Ratings?" The producers figured correctly that viewers who are baffled by the Nielsen's might be intrigued by this rare look at audience measurement. Alas, while the show sets itself up for a semi-expose about the shortcomings of ratings collection, it fails to explain what inaccurate numbers really mean. Maybe we shouldn't have expected much from PBS, which holds itself above the Nielsen's, until it comes up with a winner. How many times have we heard that? The Civil War was the network's highest rated series.
This sounded weirdly biased against PBS.
Yes, this person hates PBS.
Yeah.
This whole thing is, you think you're better than me, PBS?
I was like, I would watch that.
Yeah.
I'd check it out.
Yeah, they're like, ugh, you think you're better than this. Cheers, or should we say, Nazadroni? To one of the most intriguing and unexpected byproducts of the Soviet dissolution. TV miniseries and movies based on KGB files. Having clinched a deal with the infamous secret police, Davis Entertainment Co. is already at work on a TV flick detailing how the Soviets obtained plans for their atomic bomb. Other tantalizing projects include a KGB view of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Stalin, and UFOs. Nobody's saying how many rubles the rights to the post-communist inside scoop cost. Probably plenty. But it delivers us from our own tired scandals, e.g. Elvis, JFK, and Marilyn. It's worth it at any price. What?
I thought this was a wildly out-of-pocket thing to say. Like, hell yeah, they get to talk to the secret police. I was like, nobody's like, is this ethical?
No. You know what I'm sick of? Elvis, JFK, and Marilyn.
Why won't someone just pay off the secret police to tell them about our murders?
About murders and UFOs.
Yeah.
I'd rather see a thing about Stalin than famous and good-looking people. My God. And cheers to the mind-blowing growth of Mind Extension University, ME/U. The 4-year-old classroom service, cable's fastest growing educational channel, is now available in nearly 18 million households. Designed to round out high school learning in rural areas, ME/U offers degrees from major universities and will be adding classes for daycare workers. We think ME/U's claim that 75% of all universities will be involved in the sort of quote-unquote distant learning by the year 2000 is more than academic. With ME/U as a model, cable could go to the head of the class in revamping American education. This is fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. It was like they were so close yet so far to what would actually happen because they just didn't understand the internet and that was, yeah.
And I'm curious how it worked. Like, I imagine it was just lectures. But how do you get a degree?
I was thinking that, was it like a correspondence course, but instead of just the mailing, it was a combination of mailing and watching TV?
I guess so. I've never even heard of this. I remember cable in the classroom, but I don't remember this university. And it's interesting that they partnered with real it wasn't just like one, like we're ME/U and you can get our, like DeVry. It was, you could get them from like various different colleges. I wonder if there's anyone around who has a degree from a ME/U university.
Yeah, and I wonder if people like knew what that was at the time, if it was just so niche.
I've never even heard of it, but I love where it says 75% of all universities will be involved in this distant learning by the year 2000. So it's definitely, would you say 75% of universities are remote or have a remote component now? I'd say probably.
Well, because of COVID,
right,
everybody had to create a remote situation. But I was trying to think about like pre-COVID, was it at 75%? I don't think so.
No.
I think it was still much lower than that.
Which is funny that they said the year 2000, but it was 20 years later and took a pandemic to actually make that happen. It's so weird. Which leads me to believe it wasn't because of technology. It was because of people making money.
Oh, absolutely. I think for the longest time, they were like remote learning was seen as this more affordable option. And colleges were like, well, we couldn't keep charging our completely outrageous prices if people were remote. And then during COVID, they were like, or could we?
We can't make people have to live at school and charge them 10 times the going rate for rent. How can we do that? My God. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This has been so fun. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading the TV guide, and I feel like I learned so much.
I need to go back and watch like 10 things from this specific issue now.
Yeah.
Laura Merli, there you go. She is very funny. I really enjoyed talking to her. Again, go to her website, go see her live, do all the things, and see me live if I leave my house. You can just follow me on the socials, and if I'm doing a live show, I will tell you about it. Or next week, because I'll have a brand new edition. So I hope to see you then for a brand new episode of TV Guidance Counselor.
I usually am not a big loving watching people falling over type.